Welcome to 365 Brothers, the podcast. I'm your host, Robin Shine. I am delighted to bring to you brothers from across the United States and from various professions talking about their life experiences, their wisdom, and a conversation that also touches on racial profiling in the United States, how pervasive it is, what the impact is. And remember, you can follow us on Instagram at 365 Brothers. Also, follow us on Facebook at 365 Brothers, the podcast. If this is your first time listening to a 365 Brothers episode, make sure you subscribe because you do not want to miss one brother's wisdom, one brother's experience, and their perspective on life in the United States. Today, we're speaking with a gentleman who is from Inglewood, California, still in the neighborhood, and he is a retired civil servant, having worked in both licensing for foster care and the unemployment and disability area. Now, he is an entrepreneur. He has businesses in property management and a nonprofit called the Joy Fanatic. Okay, the Joy Fanatic Foundation. I'm all into that. So we today get to speak to Terrence McClain. Welcome, Terrence.
Thank you, Robin. Glad to be here.
Before we go into the questions, is there anything that you'd like to share with the listeners to help them get to know you better?
I would say I'm a pretty eclectic individual. Well, I grew up in Los Angeles. I do have a BA in psychology and human relations from Cal State Northridge. I'm a father of two girls, one 28 and one 18, and I'm a grandpa of a granddaughter who is almost 8. I've been married 3 times and divorced 3 times. Currently in a relationship. I have eclectic tastes in music. I love a lot of certain things that I've set my mind to at an early age, like being in love with music, German cars, natural colors like orange and gold, natural foods, symbols like your cross, your ankh, and other geometric symbols. I look at that spiritually and like spiritual symbolism. So I'm a DJ and electronic musician.
What?
I've always been gravitated toward real estate and finance. Always been kind of fascinated with big money and big corporations and organizations and the like. I'm laid back, very peaceful individual, and I've branded myself as a joy fanatic, meaning that I look to inspire joy everywhere I go through pulling the passion out of people, what their favorite art form is, and encouraging them to step into that joyful juice of whatever that passion and art form is. So that's a little bit about me, or a lot of it.
A little bit. You say that's a little bit about you. Well, I have to say, so many of the brothers that I have the privilege of interviewing, so what I was going to say is they are all so multi-talented. And then I caught myself and realized, well, in reality, isn't that everyone? And right? Like really everyone is multi-talented, but if your life circumstances have you working 2 jobs to take care of the bills, you may not get an opportunity to explore all the different things that interest you,
Right.
Yeah. So I
agree with that.
Catching myself. Yeah. Because when I think
everybody has a true art form and a true passion that if they're allowed to develop that and just do that, they would be living a life of joy. That's my mission and theme of what I'm about with Joy Fanatic.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure we will get into a little bit more about what you do with the Joy Fanatic Foundation. Let's go ahead and dive in with the first question, which is, what is your favorite song or movie, either now or all time?
Wow. I don't consider myself a movie buff, but I did some soul searching, and I do remember really liking the movie Trading Places with Eddie Murphy.
Ah,
It was, of course, funny. It dealt with high finance and stock and big money, the stock market, and so on. So I picked that as one of my favorites. And then in terms of music, of course, I have favorites. I've chosen the theme from Shaft. We've all, or at least I have, grown up with that. And I just feel it's a marvelous piece of music composed by Isaac Hayes, of course. And then there's another called The Sound of Philadelphia by a group called MFSB, Mother, Father, Sister, Brother. And this
oh,
is the theme that you hear when you watch Soul Train. It's a
oh,
very worldly, danceful, joyful soundtrack to our life. In the song, they mention people all over the world. I think it's one of the first kind of "We Are the World," kind of everybody enjoy music and let's all live together kind of songs. So that's why I chose those.
oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And it makes sense for a Joy fanatic. Because if you're all about joy, I know in my heart that of course you can't want it for just some people. Once you really are about that joy, it's impossible to not want every being on the planet to have that experience. Am I wrong?
hmm You're absolutely right. Preach, sister.
And now I'm gonna have to step back a minute and go to your favorite moving trading places, because in the introduction you talked about how you've always been fascinated by big money real estate
hmm
corporations, and then I recently, in the last 2 or 3 years, rewatched Trading Places, and
hmm
now that I'm teaching economics and am
Mm.
older and know a little bit about some money, I was really following the futures and all that they were doing.
hmm
So I'm
Right.
asking you, like, what is it about that, about big money, about finance, about real estate? What is it that calls you to it, that makes you so interested?
I believe that's my calling in some kind of way. At the age of probably 17 or 18, I read a book called Start Your Own Corporation, I believe it was. And it talked about the benefits of being incorporated, how you could, there's tax benefits to it and this and that. And I was just intrigued with how you could, that time, the 80s, take money off of credit cards and leverage it and buy a piece of real estate and use leverage to get started in real estate and stuff. So yeah, Trading Places tied into all that. I decided on certain passions and certain things that were for me at an early age and have stuck with it until now. They're just a part of me, and stepping forward into creating an organization that could benefit everybody, not just myself, but people in my family, friends, community, the world.
That's fantastic. Well, I don't know if this is what interests you, but when I hear what you're saying, I hear the ability to leverage that truly almost anyone, nearly anyone, can get into entrepreneurship, can get into real estate if you know some of the tricks of the trade, and that many of the people who've made it, they didn't start with their own money. And unless you know that, like get exposed to that, because I think of Trading Places, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like using someone else's money to make you money is so American. And unfortunately, I was just having this conversation with my econ students. It's unfortunate that what we get sold is go to a job and work. And I have a job, so I get that. But also, I put money aside because that idea that, yeah, you're going to work and you're going to make it, you're going to make it. No, inflation is going to eat it. It's going to eat it. It's going to eat it. We're finding out more and more. So anyway, I don't know if that's true for you, but I just got to say, one of the things I heard in the background of that passion is a recognition that, that what you have in the bank doesn't have to limit what's available to you to do.
Right. Yeah,
That's
so
awesome.
I grabbed on to and always looked up to that at a young age.
Yeah,
So,
that's awesome. Okay, I have to ask one last question, because you said you read this book. Was this book who gave you that book, or how did you find it? Now I'm gonna keep that short so we can get to the other questions, but I just have to know how you came across that book.
it was a family member, older cousin of mine that's still was a mentor then and still a mentor now that I've learned a lot from and revere as being a mentor and a teacher in my life. Her
That's
name is
awesome.
Francina. It's an
Francina.
older cousin in my family, yeah.
All right, well, shout out to Francina to getting you started. So let's talk about a favorite childhood memory. What is a favorite childhood memory, Terrence?
I've had a blessed life and blessed childhood. I'm grew up as an only child. I do have a half sister that I met later on as a teen, but I grew up pretty much as an only child. One of my favorite memories is sitting at the dinner table, which was a counter, and it was my mom and dad and me in the middle, and we're having a good meal. And I was called Greedy Gut at that time because I would gobble up my food and kind of be looking out on their plates trying to see what I could ask for or grab or get because I was gobbled up all of mine. So sitting in between my parents and begging for and getting food off of their plates as a young kid. Another memorable childhood moment is my mom playing all this great music on Saturday or Sunday during house cleaning and cleanup. I really got exposed to wonderful music during my childhood, and that's why I know about Theme from Shaft and Sound of Philadelphia, because my parents or mom was playing those things, and that music is timeless and still relevant today.
I'm betting you probably developed a different relationship to cleaning because of it, because I hear the embedded good memories. Is that hitting?
Music definitely helps. You cut the music on when you're doing some bathroom cleaning, deep cleaning, spring cleaning for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's talk about accomplishments. And I asked this question in two parts. First, an accomplishment that means the most to you personally, and then an accomplishment that tends to get the or wow. So let's start with the first. What is an accomplishment that means the most to you personally, Terrence?
Can they be one and the same?
They can be. Sometimes they are. Absolutely.
I believe in my case, it's one and the same. After participating in a wonderful self-development and empowering program called Landmark Education, the curriculum for living, I started something called Cafe Future and Gallery in 1998, and it ran through 2003. It was a creative arts mecca in the city of Inglewood, a cyber cafe, an internet cafe. Perhaps, definitely one of the first in the Los Angeles community area. And it was very inspiring for the community. A lot of wonderful creative things happened there. I'm still known for putting that on. And a lot of things happened there. It's grounded me in my passion for art. Drama happened there, poetry, jazz nights multiple times a week, salsa dancing. So it was a very creative and eclectic space that I created and the community enjoyed. That's an accomplishment I'm proud of. And again, I would say gives me the most people that know me for that. And for me now still promoting the arts in the Inglewood area, even since 2003 with Joy Fanatic event. I'm known for hosting eclectic and creative art-filled events.
Huh, that's amazing. What spurred you to create this? And then just so I'm clear, now, was this a building that you then managed, rented or leased or purchased and then managed these events?
It was a 5-year lease from 1998 to 2003. It was a cafe. Basically, it was a restaurant that I turned into a space that had art shows, multiple jazz and poetry nights, and a variety of different creative events, computer training, wellness lectures.
So this really sounds like
Capoeira, the Brazilian martial arts practice. So everything. It was like a community arts center, creative arts mecca. So I'm very proud of that, and I'm still have that in my blood to make that happen in the city of Inglewood.
Excellent. Oh, good to know.
Joy Fanatic is the extension of what I was doing with Cafe Future and Gallery.
Okay.
I wanted to add that the concept for Cafe Future and Gallery came out of Landmark Education's advanced course, where you create a future and step into it. The idea was for people to come to Cafe Future and Gallery and only talk about what they had intended for the future, or you will be in your future when you step inside of Cafe Future and you talk about your different aspirations, goals, and if you wanted to be, a singer, poet, you had a stage there to get up and practice and hone your skills. So that's just to expand a little bit more on that.
Oh, I appreciate that. You've heard me mention so many times, listeners, about a personal development. Sometimes I'll go ahead and say landmark. Sometimes I just say personal development. But that's one and the same for me. And I just appreciate your pointing that out. And in particular, the futures, because it was actually the first course I was in where I met you, which was Landmark's wisdom course. My coach or I'm sorry, I can't even think of the name. Wait. See, I've been in so many programs on team as committed colleague.
Was it accomplishment person? Accomplishment
yeah, there
person?
we go. Okay. So in some of the courses, you might get assigned someone who's already done the course. They kind of help you. And anyway, this person who supported me, Satoris, she had a space that she created for comedians to do stand-up. And she let me, because I was in the middle of doing 365 poems at the time. And anyway, she let me come up after a couple comedians and the crowd was still in there. They weren't ready to leave. And I read a couple poems, and I share that with you in this moment because it was such a new future for me. I then went on to do some poetry readings and some other spaces. And yeah, I just really appreciated that, kind of how we were talking about earlier about people having all these talents. And when you finally get an opportunity, like someone just says, go ahead and try it. Just do it. Just, show up, try it. What could happen? And then you do it. It alters something for you. And what I'm clear about is how many people stepped into that creative arts mecca and, just got to know themselves in a new way. And then from there, how many people ended up doing something with their life, whether it was an avocation or a vocation that was directly influenced by having been in that space that you created. So, on behalf of all the people whose lives you changed or touched, thank you.
Thank you for that acknowledgement. Yes, I have gotten letters, and still today I get pats on the back for that sped in time, that special place that was created.
Well, I understand why that is one and the same, both one that means the most to you and gets the most awe. So let's talk about words, Terrence. What is a favorite quote, saying, metaphor, or book?
It's actually the title of a book and a saying. Ask, and it is given. It's a
Okay.
book by Esther and Jerry Hicks. It's
Mhm.
called Ask, and it is given. This book, it was recommended to me by a good friend that overcame an illness, he claimed, by reading this book and focusing on the exercises that it mentions to bring yourself up the emotional scale. There's an emotional scale that we as humans all gravitate up and down, and joy is at the top. This book is really a key on how to live a life of joy. And I keyed on this book and I created a concept or a character of a Joy Fanatic, actually one of my original DJ names.
Okay.
And this book was the inspiration for me latching on to the concept of joy.
Tell us a little bit more about Joy Fanatic, the foundation. What do you do with that?
Well, you heard all the wonderful things I mentioned that I was promoting and being host to at my Cafe Future and Gallery. That was a brick and mortar location that I don't have anymore. So after moving on from there, I began to DJ in art galleries, which increased my passion for art. Eventually, the name DJ Joy Fanatic morphed into something encompassing more community. So I created it into Joy Fanatic Foundation, nonprofit foundation. It's small, but since 2012, 2013, I've been branding events where people can come and again have that opportunity to express their art form via poetry, via art, via a band, whatever their passion and art form might be. I put on about 5 events per year that will give host to a variety of different art forms: fashion shows, poetry, live art shows. So I create basically mini festivals.
That's cool. I love it. Like I said, having benefited from people who have hosted events in which I have had the privilege of participating, and then just being a person who's gone to, comedy clubs where, new comedians are trying out their material, or poetry readings where new poets are just getting started and finding their voice. It's so exciting to both be a participant, but also it's exciting just to be there and watch people work out who they are,
Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
I love being the host, the organizer, and the promoter of events like that.
That's awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit more about you. What is a significant person, moment, or event that either changed the trajectory of your life or had a significant impact on your life?
I would have to put my finger again on the personal development course called Landmark Education, the Forum, or the Curriculum for Living. After doing Landmark's Curriculum for Living, I stepped out into Cafe Future and again went on to do things in the community via DJing at art shows, and eventually went on to start the nonprofit that I'm continually pushing forward now. So this course really opened my eyes and showed me that I did have the courage to do exactly what I wanted to do in business, to start something big. Cafe Future was a start. And I would say Joy Fanatic Foundation now is the upgrade.
Okay, so I'm going to get all up in your business right here, because I too have done the program. Like I remember the biggest thing I got for myself was, and I wouldn't normally have this conversation with most guests, but since, you mentioned Landmark, I was just like, social anxiety, just, I don't want to go nowhere. My big weekend was taking a long walk, going to Hollywood Video and checking out like 3 movies, which would last me until Sunday afternoon, which I'd then take another long walk and drop them off. And that was needed to decompress from my week, which was completely overwhelming. And so, that was it until I got like how I was making myself crazy by taking things so seriously and having to control it all. And once I saw that, and let me be clear, also the fear that I had about saying the wrong thing, it's like it had me so keyed up and tense. It's no wonder I couldn't go anywhere social, because all I could think about was I'm gonna say the wrong thing. And now here I am a decade plus later and, hosting a podcast and running my mouth like I'm everybody's, favorite person to talk to. So,
Hey,
right. And so there's like
you
all this
transform.
transformation, right? And, and again, my favorite flavor is Landmark. I know other people in my family and other people in the world, y'all got your favorite flavor. But right now I'm talking to a person who shares the same favorite flavor. So Terrence, what was it that got you to the place where you could access the courage to do what you're doing?
I just saw that nothing was hindering me except for my own mindset. And it's something about the Landmark Forum where you peel layers back and you get to see, that, really it's nothing holding you back except for a story or something that you're telling yourself based on something, from your past. So I took Landmark to heart and really I wanted to try it just to see if it would work. And of course it did. Anything that you do ask for, it will be given if you focus on it and
I see you.
put your mind to it. Landmark ties into a lot of other life altering philosophies where, you put your mind to something, you focus on just that, think positive in a variety of ways, step out of your own comfort zone, and magic can happen.
Indeed, it does. So thank you for sharing that. For folks who might be interested, like this is not a promo, I get no money, but if you heard something that's interesting, I'm just going to say landmarkworldwide.com, and there'll be a link in the show notes. So now I'm going to ask you, what is a moment or event that either highlights or signifies your experience as a Black man in the United States?
One earliest thing was in college at a sociology class. This teacher was just so dynamic. He made that sociology class so interesting, and I learned a lot. And one of the main things I learned was about the power structure of America, or the power elite. And that we hear about it sometimes where they talk about the wealth in America is controlled by 1 or 2%, who knows who that is at the top of the money in America. But whoever has the most money in America is called power elite. And that's who really calls all the shots. It's not really the president, but the power elite is who controls America. So it really opened my eyes to capitalism, the whole money game, big corporations, and the like, which kind of ties into some things we talked about earlier about myself. But on another note, I did, as a Black man, feel slighted, at least on a couple occasions, being a DJ that showed up on time, that provided excellent music for a diverse crowd. One time I was DJing at an art gallery, great crowd. I believe it was like an 8-hour day. I was there all day. Did the art show and then provided music for the club after party, after hours downstairs. I was leaving for the night and, of course, looking for compensation and pay. And it seems like I was forgotten. No pay was coming to me. And I had to somewhat raise a ruckus as to why and how could you and so on. And in that moment, I felt like I was being discriminated against as, a well-performing Black man, but yet, oh, don't worry about compensation.
Yeah.
But every time I did services for them after that, I got overly compensated because of the ruckus I did raise that time.
Oh, wow. 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 And so I hear a couple things. One is clearly they were satisfied with the service they received because they continued to request your services.
Right.
And two, they learned that they better respect your services. Excellent.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
Have you had any interactions with law enforcement? And if so, what or when?
Yes, well, being a young Black man growing up in Los Angeles, eclectic taste, I decided on classic Volkswagens as an early age. That's what I liked and wanted. So old Volkswagen Buds and vans is what I was driving at around 16, 17. And me and some cousins are in an old classic Carmen Gia and driving in an area of LA that probably it looked odd for, I guess, young Black cats in these particular classic German cars. So I've gotten stopped by the police at least a few times and made to sit on the curb. It was dressed very nice, but made to sit in the dirt while they looked around or interrogated. I wanted to know where you're going and where are you coming from, just because of driving a car that I'm sure they felt like, what are these guys doing in this nice old car?
Mm-hmm. And is it a classic?
Yeah, these are classic Volkswagen cars, the older ones. It's something I love since I've been driving, and one of my hobbies. By driving around in those, the police felt some suspicion for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah, and I will say, let's just say it doesn't fit the stereotype, right?
Exactly.
Of a German car lover, someone who really, it's like when I grew up, I remember 280Z clubs. So I remember Japanese cars. And then, of course, you got your American-made classics, but you don't associate. I'm going to say as a culture, we don't associate German car loving with African Americans. And right. I get that.
I'm an exception in that case.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? And then the other thing is some of it has to do with exposure too, because I'm gonna be honest with you. I didn't know two things about an Audi until I went on a lot, and it was an American car lot. But they had these used cars. So I always buy used because I'm saving my money. And anyway, I saw this Audi and I just fell in love with the interior. I'm not gonna lie. People who love cars and motors and all that, you're gonna be like, that's why. And I'm like, yes, that's why. So anyway, but as my listeners have heard a ton of times, I had to get rid of that car because I got too many tickets in it because it was good to drive.
Ooh, which Audi model was that?
It was the A6. Oh my gosh. That's 6-cylinder. I mean, I have a 6-cylinder now. It's a little, it's a, Lexus hybrid. And it's 6 cylinders too, but it ain't those 6 cylinders.
Yeah, that Audi, that's a German car.
Oh, yeah. And the handling, the way it would turn a corner. Oh, my gosh. Oh, my gosh. Just put a smile on your face. So anyway, now I'll ask you, if the United States was a woman with whom you could speak, whether she's a mother, lover, stranger, neighbor, friend, you call it, what would you say to her, the United States?
Hey, girl, I know you're hurt. I'm hurt too. Let's get complete. Let's get complete with the past. Let's take a look at what's so in the present and take a hard look at the hard truth and reality of what's going on right now. Let's design a future where babies, where kids are watched and nurtured from birth, brought up to revere their natural gifts and talents and art forms, where the society will be loving, joyful, gifting, and sharing art forms back and forth as a means of currency.
Mm.
And capitalism is not so much golden of the day. Let's gift back to more of a gifting society where each person's gifts and art forms are revered and exchanged as monetary means.
Got it. That's very cool. There's so much about that. That's awesome. One is just saying, what's so right now? Like, let's just take a real inventory right now. Some people will say, why are we having to have conversations about what happened in the past? It wasn't me. It wasn't my grandparents even. Or, that wasn't you that experienced, for example, slavery. And I think some people miss that. Even if you go ahead, let's say, take all the past out. Let's not talk about it. Let's just talk about today. That even if you just focused in on the what's so today, the who gets financed, how those choices are made, what's going into artificial intelligence and creating algorithms that say who should get hired and who shouldn't. How segregated are our cities today? Like if you just did a what's so right now today, there would still be enough to have a conversation about what we need to do to, in your words, design a new future, like to create something together. So I love how you said that. So there's that. Yeah. Anyway, thank you.
Thanks for that question. That's pretty intriguing.
Yeah. Thank you. I wish I could take credit for it. Some angel woke me up in the middle of the night and said, now ask this. So what is a moment in your life that exemplifies the meaning of love to you? And keep in mind, you're not saying it's the best moment or the only, but just what's a moment that exemplifies the meaning of love to you?
Time with my grandchild. It was a teaching moment where I took my grandchild with her bike and encouraged her to learn how to ride, of course, without training wheels. So that was my task as a grandpa. And we went to a park or open space, and she tried and fell and tried and stopped and tried and kept messing up, but kept getting a little better each time. And that moment where she was able to keep the bike up and keep going and go around in a circle and around in a circle was just a moment of joy for me. And that expresses love to me, to be able to teach something to your offspring that's going to enhance them or make a difference in their life. So those teaching moments with my grandchild and my daughters are moments of love for me.
I can't help myself because I see your logo, Joy Fanatic, and I'm like, why do I know that while, yes, it was a teaching moment, it was also a moment where you got to see her face light up with joy.
Right. Yeah. And she's a bike rider now.
Hey.
She doesn't need me at her side anymore. She's on it.
I do remember when I first learned how to ride a bike. I remember the street. I remember my excitement. It's such a big deal.
Yeah.
All right. What is a practice that has served you well in life? And please be specific. What do you do? How often? And how did you discover or develop this practice?
I would say an ongoing practice for me, again, since a young age, was to be vegetarian or to eat healthy.
Really?
In high school, yeah, age 17, I had to do a book report for one of the classes, English or sociology, and I chose a topic that I was interested in at the time. You know, is vegetarianism versus eating meat really good? So I took the time to do research. And again, my cousin Cena, or friend Cena,
Mm-hmm.
had a wealth of books and different knowledge about things. And another book title that I remember was called Back to Eden. It was a primer of vegetarian and healthy eating that's been around since the early 1900s or so. But it's full of recipes and good dietary information about basically leaving meat out of your diet. So I've been practicing in between pescatarian and vegan since then. I'm a very good cook. Some people call me a chef.
Mm.
I'm able to whip up pretty good and tasty vegetarian meals. Yeah, almost every day. And I've been doing this for years.
Yeah.
I just add turning healthy eating or vegetarian or anti pork and beef and chicken and turkey at a young age kind of transformed my family as well. Of course, in the beginning, it was unheard of to not want to eat meat or bacon or this or that. But now my family has its own recipes for different vegetarian recipes that they developed in my honor for Thanksgiving and other occasions. And then they've learned to eat more and more healthy over all the years.
That's
So
amazing.
I've changed my family dietary habits to some degree over all the
Yeah,
years.
that's great. That's really cool. I my family was in the nation probably when I was like second grade. I mean, I just remember when I was 6 and 7 that my mom was still making pork chops. I still remember how they taste,
Mm.
but it's better to say I remember how they smelled, like it was a good smell until I was 8. And then it was like, and I adjusted. It was like not a big deal. So I've hardly ever had, I mean, truth is there's pepperoni on a pizza and sometimes I'd still take them off, but if one stays on there, I'm not tripping.
Right,
When I
right.
was younger, I'd be like, no, I have to get all of it off. But anyway,
Right.
and I tried playing around with, I thought I was going to go never vegan, but vegetarian.
Uh-huh.
But man, those cravings that you get when you first start, and then I couldn't get past that. And I was like, I gotta have some meat. But
Well,
I am glad to say that I have cut down substantially, which
yeah.
feels good. Yeah, yeah. I admire
Well, I
people.
still like to have a nice piece of salmon or some fish or shrimp every now and then, but
Yeah,
not necessarily every meal. But
right. Exactly.
I make a mean barbecue tofu that'll
Uh-oh.
make you say, wait a minute, this is
Okay.
good. This
Okay.
is
Shoot. Maybe
good.
I might have to hit you up for a recipe or something because I ain't found a tofu yet.
Okay.
That'll make me go, oh, that's good. Not one.
Uh-huh.
um, thank you for sharing all that you've shared. Now that we've had this conversation, what did you get for yourself out of participating in this conversation?
This was very rewarding for me. It allowed me some moments of self reflection. It allowed me to relive and enjoy some joyful moments from childhood. And it allowed me to see my goals clearly and how I've made a difference over time and how I still want to make a difference. So your questions caused me to do some self examination and current, present soul searching. And I appreciate that.
Oh, that's awesome.
It made me really have to think. It also felt good to share myself.
Nice.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a privilege. It's every single conversation is nothing but a joy for me. And, I'm always left with a kind of an impression of each brother, a word or two that just stands out. And for me, the word is catalyst for you. Like I think of fire, I think of the opportunity, I think of just like igniting the fire in others, that they get to experience their passions, they get to experience their creativity, and they get to be inspired by the passions and creativity of those that they see through the things that you do. Even being a DJ and getting people out on the floor, like you really are a catalyst for joy, passion, and creativity. Thank you for being that in my parents.
Thank you for that marvelous acknowledgement. That felt really at home. Thank you, Robin. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Remember, you can follow us on Instagram at 365 Brothers. Also, follow us on Facebook at 365 Brothers, the podcast. Lastly, I just want to let you know, producing a podcast, it takes something, and I'm really grateful to have partnered with alidu.com. They make publishing easy. There's a link in the show notes for anyone who either has a podcast or is thinking about a podcast. You don't need to learn all that sound balancing and compression. Save all that. Use your time for what matters, interviewing and sharing the stories that your podcast brings. Thank you for listening to 365 Brothers. I certainly hope you enjoyed the episode. I encourage you to subscribe. Please leave a review. I want to know what you think. Also, if you know someone who would be a fantastic guest for 365 Brothers, please direct them to our website, 365brothers.com. You'll also find all the episodes there, 365brothers.com. And your support is welcome. And remember, to listen is to love.